A rich girl once told me she didn't shop in thrift stores because they were sad places. And immediately I pictured myself, trotting alongside my mom at the community thrift on the south side, the dusty heaven that produced all my toys and dresses as a kid. I remember this will be some Natalie Cole, or Otis Redding, or Earth, Wind & Fire shooting through the speakers. My mom humming about everlasting love while scouring the kitchen utensils, and I know the rich girl is wrong. The thrift stores are anything but sad. Mom had rules when I was young. Pants should be under $10, shirts less than $5, a good jacket maybe 15 or 20. I'm not sure if she made these rules or inherited them as I did, but I keep them with me wherever I go. Know that a woman who came before you knew you would need guidance, and so she gifted you, from her tired palms, her oldest blueprints for existing. The women in my family have always been the most original. Trust them to find a way to do something when every easy option is gone. Turn the blouse backwards and now it fits better. Roll up the sleeves, remove shoulder pads, learn to sew so you can hem your own clothes. What can you create when the only thing in front of you is your hands? How fast can you think? How deliberate can you be? Can you imagine something better than what you have? Then make the thing you have better. Who taught you to make a solution where there is none? Who was it that said adapt or die? And did they meet my mother, queen of couponing and early morning yard sales before the Texas heat brushes the back of the neck? When I tell you department stores overwhelm me, what I mean is 15% off is not a sale. I'm not even sure why they have sales, because I'm not showing up till it goes on clearance. Mom says everything goes on clearance. Mom also says the only things you should buy new are shoes and underwear, that just because you don't have money doesn't mean you can't be sanitary. Don't leave the store until you've seen everything. The selection changes every day. Every 24 hours, a handful of new chances to become an artist. My mom says she used to write poetry. My father, when he was alive, was a dancer. Did I learn grace, or was it passed through the blood? Have I always been creative and practical? Today, I bought 2 sweaters, 2 belts, and a mason jar for $3. Texted my mom, thinking of you.
Buenas noches and welcome to our 10th annual La Mujer Festival. This year we are highlighting the accomplishments of mujeres who inspire us by their bravery, resiliency, and in their courageous empowerment of others. Soy Cindy Brio, managing producer of Escándalo, a fully improvised telenovela, and I will be your host tonight. Estoy encantada de estar aquí con ustedes. And on behalf of the City of Austin and the Emma S. Barrientos Mexican American Cultural Center, I'd like to say, bienvenidos a todos.
Thank you to the George Washington Birthday Celebration Committee and to the assembled dignitaries of these 2 great cities. It's a glorious, grande y bravo morning, because we stand astride 2 great nations above a river that has held us together much more than it has forced us apart. George Washington could never have known that these twin cities would make his birthday into such an important lesson for the world.
My mom belongs to the Society of Martha Washington.
My grandmother portrayed Martha Washington.
I am this year's guest representing Nuevo Laredo, Tamaulipas.
I have probably the longest lineage in the society of like Debs. And on my mother's side, my grandmother
I'm the
is
29th member.
3 cousins represented, and I'm a debutante this year.
Buenos días Laredo, buenos días Nuevo Laredo y buenos días el mundo entero. Estamos aquí en el Mañanero, ya listos para regalar boletos. Además vamos a tener las celebraciones grandes del WBCA, el carnaval, el desfile de todos amigos sobre los grandes eventos aquí en Laredo, Texas. Danny Boy del Mañanero representando, tomando la casa. Vamos avanzando con más música. Esto es lo más reciente amigos de talento local de Laredo, Texas. Él es Roel Nava y se llama la canción Me Arrepiento de Ti.
Jerome.
Don't get a red.
A lot of my friends, like we always say, like we have a love-hate relationship with Laredo because there is nothing to do here. I mean, for like kids our age, there's nothing to do, but we love it.
No one on Facebook.
Laredo feels more like a family just because everybody knows everybody. I go everywhere, and as soon as they hear my last name, they know who I am. They know my grandma, they know my mom.
Are we gonna play those little games that they have here, that they always play there? The ones in the middle of the courtyard thing.
I don't know, I guess. We're gonna see where my dad is.
Jerome, be careful now. You're in the Martas. You don't want to hurt yourself.
When
Las Martas has been a family tradition for most of us.
No, they lost the first one.
I've wanted to be presented as a Deb forever. It's, I think, every little girl's dream in a way. I'm part of the Marthas because it's something that I've always wanted to do, but it's not my whole life. I like being different.
Thanks, Antonio. Well, in news across the border, if you heard loud explosions and sounds of gunfire last night, you weren't alone. The echoes of violence in Colorado left many wondering just what happened. The passerbys in the area reported hearing gunfire for at least 15 minutes at about 1:30 a.m. One woman living near the river says sounds of the drug war like last night are becoming more and more frequent.
Fueron como unas 4 veces que sí. 4 veces. This week I heard it 4 times. So we usually hear it every week. But last night it was very powerful. It sounded like cuerno de chivos and even grenades. It sounded like it was close right by the river.
As things on our side of the bridge remained calm, meanwhile those living in Nuevo Laredo are posting messages.
No podría decir soy más mexicana ni tampoco puedo decir soy más americana. Creo que tengo de las dos. Si hubiera una palabra que fuera mix de los dos, creo que eso soy yo. Porque tengo las dos culturas y tengo, bueno, los dos idiomas y he estudiado en las dos partes. My mom, she's like, I didn't want to tell you before because you were so busy and I didn't want to get your hopes up. But I was checking if you could come out as a debutante in the Society of Martha Washington. And I was like, really? Like, you're not part of the society, so like, how am I going to be part of it? They wanted someone well-rounded from Nuevo Laredo. My mom was asking, so they're like, yes, since you're doing all of those community service hours, they said yes.
Las Martas present girls for George Washington's birthday. The society is by invitation only. 3 of my friends that were supposed to come out with me since we were little kids, when they got their acceptance letter, they declined. Whether it was financial problems or like as you grow older, you just choose that you don't want to do something. Everybody has that little battle between obligation, tradition, individuality. Even though we had been friends forever, it was kind of like our friendship only went so far. So that has left room for a lot of others that would have originally not been able to be presented.
The day that I found out I was going to be a debutante, I did get nervous. When I first met the other debutantes, like, their moms are in it, and like they know they're gonna come out. And me, it was like, I didn't know I was gonna come out. I'm just kind of like the oddball. It's really hard if you're new.
My mom, she did it, and she wanted me to have the experience that she did. It's something that's been in my family for so long. In a way, it was like a way of life for my family. There's been 28 different members that have been involved, whether it be Pages, George, Martha, Deb's, escorts, and I'm the 13th daughter to be presented as a Deb.
My aunts and relatives were the founders or the charter members for the Society of Martha Washington. I'm involved with the society, but my biggest role is the designing and production of the gowns worn by the debutantes.
Should I do her measurements? 26. And I love the way you do the layers of lace. Yeah.
The committee from the WBCA was invited into the White House with our lovely President George Bush, who we all love very much in Texas. And here's my dress. It was a great hit. I tried to send them without the dress, but they said no dress, no entry. So, and this is my grandson, Tomas Volpe, and very excited that the president was so nice. My daughter and the rest of the entourage was all nervous to meet the president, and this kid goes, excuse me, sir, what's the circumference of the White House and the Oval Office? So George Bush goes, duh, well, let me think here. He was really interested in Tomas. He said, I'm going to give you a tour of the White House. So there goes my daughter in her high heels getting the whole tour. She was exhausted. But he was so nice and did not know the circumference, but he said he would find out. I became involved in the dressmaking through my daughter's presentation, and I wanted my daughter to have a lovely traditional dress the way that I had had, and that's what I've done. I've carried that tradition and taken it to another level. I was presented in 1960 when I was a senior in high school. It's ironic, but me and my two sisters who were presented with our escorts married our escorts. So some people have called it the mating game, but it really isn't.
At this time, the Society of Martha Washington takes great pleasure in introducing the 2010-2011 debutantes.
As soon as the music starts, then you're gonna...
Come back. Arturo Ramirez, you're there, and then you start walking.
Let's try that again. We're gonna try that again with music.
Music.
Daughters of the members have first choice for presentation, then granddaughters, great-granddaughters, nieces, and we invite out-of-town guests. The process of becoming a member of the Society of Martha Washington, it's very democratic and anybody can apply. You're sponsored by a member with 2 signatures, you're put on a waiting list and voted in by the membership. Anybody can apply. It's an honor to be chosen. Some people just could not even do it or want to do it because it's very involved. You have to be outgoing and theatrical person, patient, willing to, go through all the ritual. It's a hard year.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Society of Martha Washington proudly presents Ms. Rosario Guadalupe Reyes.
The committee has to agree. Like if they would have had somebody else from Nuevo Laredo, they would have said no to me.
Rosario is the Society of Martha Washington's guest this year, representing our sister city of Nuevo Laredo.
She is presented this evening on the arm of her father, Mr. Rafael Reyes.
Right after I said yes, I was really happy. Like I said yes right away. But then afterwards, I was just really nervous to let people down. I guess it's normal to be nervous since you don't know what to expect. I really didn't know anything. Like, I was just like lost.
If you belong to Laredo and you've, since 100 years before, your parents and your grandparents and everybody has celebrated George Washington, you celebrate it too. For example, as a child, my mother would always buy us new clothes, or more likely, make new clothes for us to wear to the parade. It's like some event like Christmas.
In those days, my mom sewed for the Martas, helped sew the dresses. The average gown costs around $15,000, but a few girls spend as much as $30,000 on the gown, and that's really a lot considering that the medium income in Laredo is around $40,000. I guess you would call it a moment of coming to class consciousness when we found out the girls in our class that were going to dub the next year. They went to our Catholic high school. We played on the same sports teams. You know, we cheated off of each other's exams. I mean, we'd been with them in school for years, and all of a sudden it was kind of like they came out. You know what I mean? That was a real sense of differentiation at that moment that I hadn't necessarily known before. You know, like, oh, that's them over there, and that's us over here, and they are of a different class.
Qué bueno que dijo esta noche me recordó de ahora. Sí. Porque me había dicho usted, ¿verdad? Sí, yo le dije, ¿cómo van a hacer ahorita? Buenos días. Also, it takes you never gain that much. You're fine. You don't have to.
These are one-of-a-kind dresses, and these dresses can weigh up to 100 pounds.
And you're very comfortable in the dress, right?
Yes.
And it's going to get much heavier, Rosario. Prepárate, va a estar pesado.
All right, let me get my phone. I'm going to take a picture of you right now, Rola.
Don't give it to anyone.
I won't.
Nadie que
But
nadie
I want
vea.
her to have it later and end up for her outfit.
Right, but okay, don't put it on the
sure.
internet.
No, are you kidding? Of course not. Ay, Linda, I don't know how you do that. Que dibuja todo y cada vestido diferente.
My reputation by now has already set the pace. The girls are walking in the door, they already know. I do my style, I know when I'm right, and I follow it, and if the girls come with their ideas or whatever, and I listen, but we end up my way.
¿Y la pieza esa dónde estará?
If there's resistance, they're out the door.
Mi idea es poner todos los brinquitos estos atrás, porque va a salir la tela. Esto se recorta y va a ser la tela esta. Y pienso hacerle así, because it's very delicate y se hace el vestido ver más color de rosa.
Debutante presentations are done all over the world. But this one's a little special. It's different in the aspect that it's portraying history.
This is how we're going to line them up for the
media day.
For media
So
day
that
and
will
the
be
pictures.
Thursday, the 17th, yes.
Read me that part that you were
Yes,
reading me
yes.
about Martha and how she educated herself in all the social graces, but it wasn't her most favorite.
I just love that. In accordance with the customs of the day, she had little formal education, instead receiving a ladies' education, which emphasized music, the arts, dress, demeanor, and household management. Martha would also prefer the familiarity of domestic life over the demands of high society. But then here, as I continued to research, the Washington sought to establish the American presidency equal to that of any European capital. So that's when I put, yes, this is my theme.
Martha is hosting a grand ball in honor of her husband, George Washington.
Because it's his birthday. So they've invited all these inventors and musicians and artists and all these, yeah, very interesting people.
We have Eli Whitney is going to be attending.
And we took some artistic license.
I think everyone recognizes that George Washington was never in Laredo. I mean, everybody knows that. These events do not follow any historical timeline. They're anachronistic. So that you have the George Washington's birthday celebration with people attending, these pretend guests who were not alive at the time or not in Washington.
This is all make-believe. It's like walking through a door.
We're all portraying somebody from back then. I was Benjamin Franklin's daughter. It's like me and my husband. So ironic with Laredo being the majority Mexican, and we're here celebrating George Washington's birthday. It's kind of crazy. It's like, why do we do this?
The whole celebration was started by the Order of Red Men in the late 18th century. And the origins of the order started on the East Coast right after the American Revolution.
The Red Men were a bunch of white guys dressed up as Indians, reenacting the Boston Tea Party and pretending to throw tea into the bay to protest the British.
It's a way of claiming the U.S. against the empire, right? The British Empire. It's like saying, like, we're authentic Americans, and one of the ways you do that is by dressing up as an Indian.
When the order takes it to Laredo, it's 100 years later. They come to Laredo for commercial, lucrative purposes. However, they also want to feel like they belong somewhere and that they are in the United States. It's a real conundrum because everybody's Mexicano and you're trying to impose this other way of looking.
The whole event started in 1898 as a sort of minstrel show by the Anglo migrants to Laredo.
They put on red face and brown face and reenacted a battle in which the Indians beat the Mexicans.
The key to the city is given to George Washington. This narrative paints a very redeeming image of relations between the Anglo, indigenous, and Spanish people. The whole purpose is to Americanize the population.
Pretty soon thereafter, they started inviting Mexicans into the George Washington Society. And it was precisely a way of brokering economic power.
Well, what happened was that the celebration became Mexicanized. You have to remember that at that time, even the city council minutes were in Spanish. It was a Spanish-speaking, culturally Mexican community. Often, these newcomers who are mostly Anglo, they marry the Spanish landed elites and they integrate into that level of society, into that class structure.
The Mexican families, the more elite families of Laredo step in to celebrate George Washington's birthday and take over the organization.
The Order of Red Men fell by the wayside. It's no longer around.
And what started as one event has, over the years, evolved into an incredible month-long, binational, bicultural party.
The landed elite, in collusion with the newcomers, come together and affirm their existence and their right to govern, their right to the land, their right to be the patron.
Very few people get the opportunity like I did. I think it's really important to connect with the people that didn't have the opportunity to do what I'm doing and to see that, not that it's something that you can work for to be a Deb, like it's not that way, but just to see that it's not something that we're up here and everybody else is down here. It's not like that at all. You deal with what you're given, and it's up to you with what you make out of it.
Well, the bodies of 4 decapitated men without clothing were found with their heads left on one of Nuevo Laredo's memorials dedicated to Mexico's independence.
Of course, there's, the less comforting sides of Laredo as far as like the drug and gangs and violence and everything from across, because, we can't kid ourselves. It's just across the bridge, and that really doesn't mean anything. Once you live here, like across the bridge is nothing.
The drug war separated these communities that have been one community for 300 years. What people don't understand about the border is many Mexicans are able to cross because they have the MICA, the card that allows you to cross for a day or two.
The majority of my friends come every single day to my school. They cross the bridge every single morning. A lot of the wealthier kids, like a lot of wealthy kids, come from across. They have their drivers and they bring them because their parents want a better life for them. Unfortunately, a lot of them come from homes with one parent because of the drug violence and because of the dads having those high jobs that have given them the money.
So you're gonna see me turn from a uniform to Mary.
Mary and Joseph, you stay here.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. As we celebrate today as the St. Augustine School community, let us remember what the La Posadas is all about. It's a reenactment of the story of Mary and Joseph seeking shelter and hospitality in the hours right before the birth of Jesus.
Millions of migrants have sought survival by attempting to cross our southern border. Refugees from conflict, natural disasters, and a harsh global economy. The Las Posadas story calls us to see, in the struggles of Mary and Joseph, the difficult journeys of our migrant brothers and sisters.
Estaba en primero de primaria cuando nos dijeron que nos íbamos a venir a estudiar acá y fue un cambio drástico. Estuvo muy difícil porque yo todavía vivía en Nuevo Laredo y nos vinimos a estudiar acá, pero no nos cambiamos para acá porque no tenían las visas mis papás. Primero, segundo, tercero y cuarto estuve cruzando el puente. Y luego ya en quinto ya tenía permiso mi papá de estar aquí, mi mamá también, entonces nos vinimos a vivir acá. It's a really big commitment. I did get to a point where I was just like, what did I get into? Never knew it was so much practice and so many parties.
Okay, everybody look at the camera, please. Please pay attention. Laura, pay attention.
The debutantes, many of them look white because that's what they are.
Here we go.
Stand still.
1, 2, 3.
They're the descendants of the Spanish Europeans that came and conquered South Texas.
Most of the people that are invited are either members of the Spanish founding families of Laredo or the Anglo families that helped start the celebration. When I leave home, people are actually surprised to find out that I'm of Mexican heritage. So I always have to go back into the story that my family goes back to the Spanish colonizers. We didn't cross the border crossed us. My family has been under Spanish, Mexican, and American governments and hasn't moved an inch.
So we come this way, and we're from this way.
Very nice to be able to trace your roots all the way to when they settled the land. And, to say, hey, I'm related to her, and, I know them.
This is on the maternal side, our grandmother's side. And they were original Spanish land grantees from the King of Spain.
My grandmother is Nieves, who married Fernando Zúñiga, who had my mother. And then I had Laura Garzajovo, being escorted by Fernando Zúñiga, my cousin, who had the same parents as Nieves.
The landed community were staunch Mexicanos, Tejanos. They rebelled against Mexico. They didn't want to be part of the Mexican Republic. The United States waged war against Mexico in 1848 at the conclusion of the war. Now, Texas is part of the United States. The Tejanos in Laredo disinterred their dead, crossed the river, and reburied them on Mexican soil. When Nuevo Laredo becomes founded, it's the same families. Why would a Mexicano community celebrate an Anglo oppressor?
I do think strategically it was very smart. Once these territories become part of the U.S., Anglos came wanting to dispossess people of their land, violently or otherwise. There was a lot of lynching in Texas. Squatters would come in and then they would simply kill or claim the property. If you wanted to keep your land, you had to prove that you had eligibility for U.S. citizenship. And in order to be a citizen, you had to establish that you were white. But you look down from Washington and you see all of these Mexicans dressing up like George and Martha Washington, and you're like, oh, they're okay.
All these families that have been there for a long time, there's this sense historically of being outside of Mexico, but also of the U.S. And so it's kind of that third space, that in between.
Laredo was fortunate in that the Anglos saw nothing there. You know, they saw an arid wasteland, which later became very rich in oil and minerals.
Because the Mexican Tejanos are able to hold on to their land, a lot of them discover fortunes of oil and become uber wealthy. They're, still some of the wealthiest families in the United States.
The celebration always includes the elites from Nuevo Laredo because it's almost as if they are more similar to each other than they are to those who are not elites. There's almost like strengthening of a bond across the border of the classes.
This enchanted evening also highlights the customs and splendors, their traditions, and the legacies that make us proud to be Laredoans. The members of the Society of Martha Washington wish you all a most memorable Washington's birthday celebration.
Well, when people see me, they think girl with not a worry in the world, has everything like fed with a silver spoon. And it's totally not the case. Totally not the case. My parents are divorced and my mom's a single parent, and it's been like that for years. I hate it when people say like, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. It's like, no, like you should be like congratulating me. I've learned to rise above it. I don't sit back and pity myself. My mom's always taught me to have an open mind. I've had a lot of questions about stuff, and I think that's also what's made me like turn to Buddhism. I've wasted a very long time worrying about stupid things and not seeing the big picture, because it's kind of hard, like coming from a small town, to see the big picture sometimes. Mother.
is a picture from my quinceañera, which is a party when you turn 15, and the party symbolizes that you're no longer a little girl and that you have new responsibilities. In this picture, I was crowned as Queen of the Lions International, and I was very happy to be able to help the less fortunate through this organization. This is the first one, and this is when they crowned me, and it's kind of like curved, so it fits my head exactly here. Rosario, and then G. Reyes. This is the princess crown. This is a smaller crown, but I really like it because it's kind of like a modern crown, like that a queen would wear now. It says princess. The crowns represent like all the community service. This is when I was queen. This one's like 10 times heavier than that one. Let me try it on so you can see.
Le doy gracias a Dios que mi hija ha podido ser reina y ahora pues va a salir de debutante de la Sociedad de Martha Washington. Pues me siento muy, muy contenta. Sobre todo siempre le doy gracias a Dios de todo lo que, en todo lo que ha participado mi hija. Me siento muy contenta. Y mi esposo comparte lo mismo conmigo. Estamos muy, muy felices. Gracias a Dios.
Les mando un saludo ahí por la calle Guerrero de Nuevo Laredo, a los amigos ahí de Tacos Arandas de Nuevo Laredo, a los amigos también ahí, mi buen amigo el Javi Cris, el taxista número 1 de Nuevo Laredo, mi buen amigo Julio Melchi y toda la banda por ahí, les mandamos un saludo cordial. Nuevo Laredo siempre representando, escuchando Z93 92.7. Vamos a mandar saludos aquí en este lado de Laredo, Texas. Dice aquí, saludito a mi buen amigo para Jaime Ramírez y toda la gente ahí de LA Contractors y a los amigos de Texas Energy que nos están escuchando esta mañana, a los que van rumbo al jale y bueno, a todos los amigos de ahí por ahí también del puente internacional número 1, el puente internacional número 2.
No, así no se va a hacer. Esa es la razón que íbamos a cortar esto más chico. Y se pone aquí y se voltea, ¿no te acuerdas? Eso no va a jalar, quítate lo expliqué, pero como que no recibiste esa
Working with Linda was awesome. My dress was basically made for me. Since they made it from scratch, I wouldn't change anything about my dress. In my case, I don't have a legacy dress. A legacy dress is passed on to you. You might not like a certain detail on it, but like you still have to wear it anyway.
Well, what do you think?
And the dress fit like a glove in November. And the dress won't zip anymore. I had to do major dieting for the Martha dress. Like, I lost like 30 pounds.
We're trying to convert this dress. See, these flowers were from the original dress. This velvet is what my daughter wanted. The pressure cooker's on, man. This is like, I'm stressing. I want her to be happy. And I know she wants more red. That's why I know she wants more red. She wants blood. She's always wanted blood. We'll get it. Hers is very light pink, baby. It's very light pink.
Mira esto, ¿no te dije como nieve? Que te iba a brillar como nieve. If they taught you your bow, want to practice it? I think you can be looking at the audience when you do that, and don't be nervous because you're doing it excellent. The skirt looks fine. Oh. Don't worry. Just put your arms out, but look at the audience. Don't get your lipstick on your dress. ¿Ya ves? Cada vez mejor. Cada vez mejor. Beautiful, slow. 1,000, 2,000. No, you went too fast. Now start going down. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. Much slower, much slower.
Much slower?
Mm-hmm.
They're not super strict, it's just that they want you to do it right, and if you don't do it right, then you have to do it again.
Now you're going to try that faster and see if the air doesn't, when you come up, just try to come a little faster.
Oh, okay. I'm not natural. Like, I have to practice everything I do many more times than other people that they just do it once and it comes out good. I had to value the fact that I was there because my parents were trying so hard to keep me there, and I couldn't just let them down by saying, oh, I don't get it. Like, I had to try harder than everybody else.
Rosario goes to school with me, but I still wouldn't naturally interact with her as much because we're just from two different groups at school. She was queen of everything across. That's what they call her at school. It's kind of a joke because everybody says ¿Dónde está la reina? The queen of everything. Everything's been extravagant. It's a Mexican thing also. The new money, when you have the money to do it, you're gonna do it big. She does all this stuff, but we started to wonder, is it just for that crown? You don't know if it's genuine or if she's just been kind of trained to be that community service helper to get the crown, to look, I don't know.
I really look up to Mother Teresa. The Pope made her a saint because of how many people she helped, and it's really nice because it's not like she said, oh, I want to be a saint, let me start doing all these stuff to become a saint. She just did it because it came from the heart. She was also criticized at first because of they were oh, she's just doing it because she wants attention. Sometimes people say, oh, well, she's just queen because she wants to come out in the newspaper and stuff. And it's no, I want to help too.
And then me and Ali, it was like a triangle. And
wow.
I really don't want me to help you back with me.
Christina, stand right there. Rosario, right here, please.
Laura Hovo.
Laura, come here.
Right here. And then Ali Holland.
In line here. I was trying to create less habit, is what I was trying to do.
So I think you should just stick with what you're going to do. And instead of them spreading out this way.
Yeah, I'm just going to have to do it the way I can't, yeah.
There's pretty girls that have been in Martha's and they have everything, but they're empty inside. Kind of like little robots. There's certain ones that are more like me, that are all about individuality. I just think it's really important to make a statement about being a strong woman and not letting anybody tell me that I can't do something.
As soon as we get through with this practice, everybody's chewing gum is coming out.
There was definitely more hesitation when it came to the invited guests. Definitely have a lot more of a struggle because not only do you have to have the spotlight on you, you also don't really know what's going on.
I have a question. Since wearing 9, I'm left by myself, do I just scoot over a little bit or how? Because there's
No, it'll be fine. But I can't do it till all the escorts are here, basically.
When Rosario would ask certain questions, I would kind of think how do you not know that? I mean, not in a bad way, but I'd think, wow, I wouldn't think a Deb would be asking that question.
We're going to have to really concentrate and practice and think about what we're doing. All right.
It was just so much pressure. I'm a perfectionist, so I always have doubts. I'm God, what if I don't do it right? Oh my gosh, what are people going to say if I don't do it right?
1, 2, 3,
I was so scared.
Ladies and gentlemen, presenting President George Washington and the lovely Mrs. Martha Dandridge Washington. All right, let's run. Go to the places, let's do it all over again real fast. Because we got a lot of work inside.
Well, the time of year is here once again. We are getting set for Washington's birthday celebration and all of the events it entails.
We're the largest celebration in the United States that celebrates George Washington. We bring in up to $21 million in the month for Laredo.
With me are this year's Martha and George Washington, Betty Ann Moreno, and Pancho Abram.
The Society of Martha Washington unveiled the costumes that will be worn by the couple portraying the First Lady of the land and, of course, President George Washington. We spoke to the renowned designer, Linda Gutierrez.
It's a blessing that God has given me to be able to cut that way, because that's why they always fit so beautifully. I just make each one with their own pattern.
Well, if you stepped into one Laredo home today, you might have thought you were in colonial times.
What year were you born? George, can we see your teeth?
He is the most amazing man ever. Our Jorge.
Tell us a little bit about what we can expect over the next month and a half for this year's festivities.
Well, over the next month and a half, there's 27 events in 32 days, and it's going to be bigger and better than before, and invite the city of Laredo to attend with me. We're looking forward to it.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I think this is such a huge celebration along the border, but celebrating Washington and all that he represented.
I really don't. I really can't explain that, Tim. It's been a celebration for so many years, and I really think that people have become accustomed to it because it draws people together.
Hello.
Thank you to the George Washington Birthday Celebration Committee and to the assembled dignitaries of these two great nations.
This is more than a party. It is a statement to the world that a border need not be a place of division.
Este puente internacional es símbolo de los lazos que fortalecen nuestra amistad. Los niños del abrazo representan lo que mantenemos cerca de nuestro corazón y nuestra esperanza del futuro. Lord, make us instruments of your peace, that we may always work together, fostering hope, justice, and goodwill for the people of our two nations.
¿De dónde primero? Espérame.
¿Ese allá no?
Sí, este lo puedes subir aquí arriba. ¿Arriba del de la mantilla? Sí, porque el rojo está más pesado.
Ay.
La mantilla ya está.
Something must have gone wrong here. Pati, we forgot to bring my worker. Súbate a con Beto pronto, okay? Estoy en el Civic Center donde nos vestimos. Somebody's going to bring her.
Okay.
Put your little hands up.
Go up.
Do not put the weight of the dress down. Okay, pass me the string. You're going to be very surprised, little girl. Hello, all I hear is that you hate your dress. I'm like, well, I don't see how. It's gorgeous. We don't need tape right now.
Siempre han sido muchos diseños diferentes. La señora hace los dibujos y yo además hace las muestras y eso es a lo que me dedico. O sea, ella es la que pone todo por decir, se va a hacer esto y esto y hacemos todos los días.
I'm constantly breathing super heavy because you can't breathe, especially after you eat. I was getting a lot of back pain from all the weight that I had to carry. You know, having to practice your bow and then your knees start hurting. It's just hard. I would get bruises here, especially like rashes would like get raw around here because you're wearing like the cage and the pillow that's under the cage holding it in place, and then the crinolina on top, and then just the dress skirt that naturally goes in like that, and they pull it like you get raw.
Pay attention. Holding her hands, Marta, you do this. You bring the excess fabric and then it's all.
Open your leg. Okay, you got it? Yeah. Have a seat. Got it? Yeah. Better?
Yes. Oh, she's very funny.
Can I take a break, baby?
No, it's okay. We're at your call, Mama. Take it slow. Take it slow. Take it slow.
It's not impossible to bow in a 50-pound dress, but you do need practice.
No,
Earlier
like
I pushed it down before. I was like,
do you pop up?
I mean, when I saw Rosario do it, probably she just didn't go all the way down as far. She just kind of like stayed like that.
Well, you go down as far as you can, but don't turn your head. Keep them straight.
No, you don't do that. When you come out, you don't pick it up at all. Because remember, they're going to say, presenting. Rosa, if we need to take in your dress, we'll take it in. That's one thing that I can talk to my mother about if you feel like it's too big.
Like
okay?
from here, right?
Uh-huh. But, you know, you're not going to be doing that. Don't do that. You're fine. Just stand natural. And when you're going to walk out, don't pick it up. You can do it. Just go down. Don't kick. Come down the stairs. Go down the next one. Don't be afraid. Can you all, like, do a turn this way and let Rosario come through here? Attention, attention.
Can we have your all's attention? Can we have everybody move to the back area unless you all are assisting with the dresses?
Please welcome Austrian composer Joseph Heidler, portrayed by Oscar Omar Lopez II.
Oscar is escorting his cousin, Society of Martha Washington debutante, Alexandra Cecilia Howard. Alexandra is the daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Douglas and Blair Howard. She is portraying Eleanor Clark Custis. Laura Alicia Garza Hope. Laura is the daughter of Mr. Armando Garza Jr. and Mrs. Laura Lorraine Hope. She is portraying Sarah Franklin Bach.
Look down. All the way over here.
Take your time. Your problem is, you know why? You're last. And you know, it's the waiting. It's not easy. It's not easy.
Rosario Guadalupe Reyes.
Stay down a little longer. Leave your hair down a little longer. Okay.
It was a shock just in the moment to see somebody break down like that. I'd never seen that happen. I thought it was gonna be me because I was just so stressed out, but I didn't actually think somebody would cry like that. But if I were to guess anyone, it would have been more of a shock if it would have been like a legacy daughter. I don't think they would been as comforting to a daughter or someone like me with open arms like they were to Rosario, because we know what we signed up for.
Todas las familias se ponen aquí ya comenzando desde las 11 de la mañana, un día antes. Se ponen ya buscando su lugar para venir con su familia. Mucha gente aquí duermen, ponen sus sleeping bags y pues cada año nosotros aquí nos ponemos, cada año celebrando pues ya lo de Martha Washington, los vestidos. Es un vestuario carísimo de cuando se vestían como antes con los rizos y todo eso.
Concentrate on giving them bone structure and making sure that it all blends and it's not. They're in Laredo, right? They don't think people are this white. It's easier when they're darker.
This is hard to see. The Orissa is part of the legacy dress of Laurita's dress. See, I don't know if you're, this is the first dress, how it started, and now they tweaked it. This is Laura's cousin who wore this. When was this, Josie?
5 years ago? 25 years.
No.
15?
13 years ago?
Yeah.
And thank God she fit into the dress because you can imagine what they cost.
you feel like a celebrity. I'm pretty sure there are a lot of girls that want to say, hey, I want to have a big dress too and come out one day just like her. If I could give those little girls advice, I would just tell them to always have dreams and try to make them come true. Just in case like they fail for some reason, there's always something else out there for them.
That's what the parade's for. It's really for the community. That's the part where it's not just the upper class that goes, it's everyone. They seem like so excited, like genuinely excited for you. You know when they're smiling at you and like cheering for you or like yelling like, oh, good job, or it's beautiful. It's because they really mean it. They're not your parents' friends. They don't owe anything to you. They don't work for your dad. It's just random people, and I think that's what made me feel really good.
The promise and hope of the American dream begins at the borders of our great nation. Like all great American cities, Laredo is a community blessed with family traditions and rich in history.
Ladies and gentlemen, the first President of the United States, George Washington.
The First Lady of the Land, Martha Dandridge Washington, portrayed by Betty Ann Bun Moreno.
We proudly boast our border heritage, and we take just as much pride in highlighting our American heritage.
The Society of Martha Washington is pleased to introduce Alejandra Cecilia Howland. She's portraying Eleanor Park Custis, Molly Joanne Lamantia, Gabriela Cristina Alexander, Isabela Catarina Ramirez, Laura Alicia Garza Hovo,
I think it's more important to be remembered than for your dress to be remembered. I want to be the girl that leaves memory. You can feel it when somebody walks in with a presence. You can feel that. And you can also feel when it's just like, oh, okay, well, it's a beautiful dress, but that's all it is. Like, who was she again? Time doesn't stop for anybody, but it's nice to have it stop for you for a little bit.
Society of Martha Washington debutante, Rosario Guadalupe Reyes. She is portraying Catherine McCauley.
Once they opened the door, I just got so nervous. I was just really scared that I wasn't gonna do it right and let people down. Just being on stage and being someone you're not, and it's just a great feeling, kind of like you're in a movie. If I had a daughter, I would like her to be presented. This whole tradition gives you a sense of belonging to Laredo.
Everybody here. Over here. Ready? Smile. Okay, smile. One more. 1, 2, and 3. Happy.
Okay, let's do the music now.
Welcome, everyone, to the opening night of La Mujer 2021. Thank you to the Emma S. Barrientos Mexican American Cultural Center for presenting and producing this festival and inviting so many great artists to share their work with us over the next days. La Mujer is the annual celebration of women in the arts presented by the ESB, Mexican American Cultural Center. Now in its 10th year, the festival was originally inspired by Sor Juana Ines de la Cruz, one of my favorite people, and she is considered the first feminist of the Americas. This year, La Mujer is highlighting the accomplishments of mujeres, of women, primarily in Austin, but also beyond, who inspire us. I want to thank as well Cine Las Americas for co-presenting the opening night film. Tonight, we're super excited to kick off the events of La Mujer with a conversation with accomplished filmmakers about the film that hopefully many of you just watched, Las Martas. My name is Jean Lauer. I'm here to host this evening. I work with Cine Las Americas, and I'm also a professor at Austin Community College in humanities and radio, TV, film. So I love these events that bring community together around the cinematographic arts. With us this evening as well, I'd like to present director Cristina Ibarra. Cristina is an award-winning Chicana filmmaker from the U.S.-Mexico border between El Paso, Texas, and Juarez, Mexico, and she considers herself a border crosser, both geographically and through the art form of cinema, and she brings to us today 20 years of experience in both of these accomplishments. Along with us as well is producer Erin Ploss-Campoamor. Erin is a filmmaker who grew up in a multicultural and multilingual home with English, Spanish, and French. And she's worked in many genres, also with 20 years of accomplishments. So welcome to all of, to our guests and to all of our people attending. I want to also just note that we invite your questions. You can post them on the Facebook feed as we go, and we'll get to those later in the conversation. So, hi, Cristina. Hi, Erin. Welcome.
Hi. So great to be here. Hi.
Yeah, I'm super excited to get to talk with you. Do you have any opening remarks that you'd like to share before I ask some questions?
I just wanted to say thank you. Also, it's so great to be able to talk about this film after years of making it, and it feels like it's still relevant to me. So I'm happy that it's also relevant to others. And I just want to thank Cine Las Americas and the center for hosting us and having this program.
Mm-hmm. Erin?
It's the same. I very much appreciate being here, and I just love that this film is still relevant. I mean, Cristina has certainly poured her heart and soul into it, and I did as well. And we love that we get to continue to share it with the world.
Yeah, well, I was really excited also to be able to reprise its selection here. So let's just start with, this is a question that I'm sure you have heard, but because the film is now about a little over a decade from when it was filmed, I'm confident there's going to be, those thoughts that have evolved over time. But I'm very curious as to what was your kind of initial hook or initial idea when you started working on what would become Las Martas, and how did that evolve over time? Or did it evolve over time as you started shooting and getting to know the subjects?
Sure. Yeah, I'll start with that. So growing up along the U.S.-Mexico border in El Paso, I'm very interested in how film might be able to bring me back home to look at it again in new ways. And I'm interested in new ways of entering this landscape of the border, because we hear about it even back then. We were hearing about these flare-ups around the border in very negative ways. Obviously, after the Trump administration, it became very to a vitriolic level. But even back then, you were still hearing about all of these, what I would call stereotypes, of border narratives. And it was often around the drug war, or, people, undocumented immigration, really heavy social issue films that are obviously important. But I really cared about people who lived in the area and weren't seeing the headlines as a way to be in the border, but it was just like a lifestyle, people who grew up there, who fell in love. And so Erin and I were working on a different film idea, a fiction, and she was asking me about all these delays. And so I was explaining to her the story of what I found in Laredo, which was very, very different from what I grew up with in El Paso. It was a very different kind of lifestyle. I got to know it a little bit because my cousin Carla, well, now I outed her, but anyway, my cousin invited me to visit her, and I saw on the covers of all of the local magazines these, debutante figures with, the big hair and the big dresses, and it kind of reminded me of the Marie Antoinette, the Latina version of Marie Antoinette. And when I started to ask questions about who they were, I realized that everyone in town knew their names. So these young girls were celebrities in town. But it wasn't just the names of the girls that were on everyone's lips, but it was the names of the families. So they knew who their parents were and their grandparents. And I just found that really fascinating. And I had a lot of questions about why, because it was confusing to me why there was this performance to honor George Washington in a place where this territory used to be Mexico. But instead of honoring that legacy, we were honoring, the founding fathers of the United States. And I found that peculiar, but that's why I started asking questions. And then I invited Erin to come along and join me on some of these trips. Erin?
Yeah, so like Cristina explained, she, first was drawn to this story, introduced to it through her cousin and through her visits to Laredo. And she'd been working on it for a couple of years and had been talking about it to me, but I was collaborating with her on a different project, a narrative project, that eventually, she had, the project, her documentary was starting to gain steam. And we realized that's where, that's where our energy and our attention was needed. And I jumped on board at that point and helped with the ongoing production of the film. And so I got to go to Texas and be there for the debutante ball and for a lot of the key moments that we see in the film. But Cristina had already been working on it for a couple of years at that point.
But you were asking a little bit, Gina, about the whether something changed in the process.
Well, yeah, so like, you first see this celebration. I have a question I can kind of incorporate into this, which is, the cultural significance of that, and how did you feel about a filmmaker and observer about Mexican Americans dressing up as Anglo icons? But I'm going to also add my question too, which is how did you determine which two girls you were primarily going to follow? So how did you feel about this celebration when you started? And then as you worked on it, how did you choose the two primary subjects?
Yeah, so, to put it very, very plainly, I asked myself, why are these Mexican American women pretending to be white? It's like my question, really simply. And what I discovered is that it was so not what they were thinking about when they were preparing for this celebration that's very revered, and it's a celebration that's they take very seriously. And I started to really kind of understand that there was something underneath that veneer or that spectacle, and that really what was happening is that these young women were also honoring their legacy as colonizers themselves, as part of the founding families of Laredo. And those founding families came not only from the Mexican families and the haciendas and the patrones, but they also came from the Anglo immigrants who were arriving like 40 years after this territory became Mexico. And so I was really fascinated by the way identity was being performed by these young women. And thankfully, I was able to explain this vision to the dressmaker who you see in the film, Linda Lyon Decker Gutierrez, and she was able to open up her studio to us so that we could meet many of the young debutantes who were preparing for the year-long preparations that were pretty intense. I mean, it was a huge commitment. It's not one event, as you see in the film. It's many events, and you're really being taught how to socialize and how to these other skills are learned along the way about how you present yourself to the media even. And so that was quite a challenge, the fact that these young women are so prepared to speak to the media, because I was really interested in doing something the opposite from what journalists were doing. I wanted to get intimate and really understand a personal connection and a personal journey. So in looking for protagonists at Linda's studio, that's what I explained to the young women, and I asked them, would they be interested in doing this? And it's a really strange ask, because you have somebody here who they don't know, asking them to forget about what they're being taught by their mentors, and instead of saying, which is everything they say is true, but it's a very reduced, shorthand public statement. Instead of doing that, you have us saying, no, speak your mind, be free. And so it was not as easy as it might seem to find the protagonists. And then we just got lucky in that, they seem to represent two different ways of entering society. So that was really great for us.
Yeah, it was really the two girls who were able to be the most raw and vulnerable, despite all of this training that they get, all this, they have to give a lot of speeches and have very crafted kind of presentations, and they do tons of rehearsals. And so finding girls who are able to do all that, yet also be honest, with Cristina and I, was tricky, but we were very lucky in finding the two girls. Or Cristina was very lucky. She found them, and I got to hop on board and come on the journey.
Yeah, thank you for those comments, because I'm always curious as to many documentaries, right, shoot a whole bunch and then find their characters after, but it sounds like you guys were able to find those characters and go through decently planned through the process with them. I also really found striking, both when I watched the film a few years ago and then rewatching it, there's really no primary voices from men. You chose, right, to represent not just your two main characters, but many other, or I am sorry, I called them characters, but your main subjects, and then other subjects as well. The primary voices, your scholars, they're women, and the men's voices we hear are secondary, and they're sort of part of the events, but they're not, right? They're not telling their story. And I'm curious how that decision came about.
I guess I would call it almost like we were embedded with the society, because we were able to gain access to all the events, and in doing that, it's a very organic. It's almost like not even a decision. It's just what it is. It's a matriarchy. It's a women's world. It's you have to really be a daughter of a society member to be invited to present. There's other ways around it, as we saw. But that is the main way of getting involved. So, it's almost like not even something that was an issue. It's just what it is. And we went with it because it's just such a refreshing way of thinking about the role of women. These are women who are very powerful, arguably the most powerful in the city. But then they're, presenting what seems on the outside to be a ball, a pageant, but really what they're doing is they're setting a stage for a lot of the people who are the power brokers in town and outside of town to be able to meet and talk about things that we were not privy to. We didn't go and try to be a part of the conversation happening behind the stage. or I mean, rather like, you know, even further behind the stage, like, you know, in the waiting rooms and in the seats to watch. But, you know, they were happening around us. I mean, we saw Nancy Pelosi attending. I mean, this is like, she was there, you know, that she has ties to the region somehow. And yeah, so in that sense, it's just a new way of thinking about feminism for me, and it's without turning your nose up at the pageantry.
Yeah, that's certainly what drew me to the project, was that it's this matrilineal, matriarchal kind of setup, and it's this very interesting thing that on the surface maybe seems superficial. You know, it's pageantry, it's beautiful gowns, it's, you know, makeup and all this, you know, these beautiful presentations, but under the surface, there's a lot of power. Like, you know, like Cristina mentioned, you know, there's like real political power. Politicians from all over the country come to this event. Very wealthy, you know, landowners and oil heiresses and, you know, business people are part of this. And so it's very much a locus of power. And so it's just fascinating to see that with a female face to it, a female voice, and specifically a Latina one. You know, I do think that it is very refreshing. But it also is complicated because it's, you know, again, it's in a town where it's very, very wealthy people taking the stage, in a town where there isn't necessarily a lot of wealth. And so it's kind of concentrated in this very small percentage of people. And it is, of course, the whitest of the Latinx population. And so you know, so it brings up a lot of interesting conversations about power in the hands of women and in the hands of white people and the hands of the elite, and, you know, and it allowed us to explore all those dynamics in a really interesting way.
Yeah, I was especially impressed. Like, it made an impression upon me how different this scenario seems to be in Laredo with respect to the Spanish land grant history, which you do get into a little bit in the film. Just that they seemed to be able to keep their titles in ways that many others did not, when there was Western expansion and European colonization by, I mean, I guess Spaniards are European, but other European, right? Like Anglo settlers stole a lot of land. And I was curious, you know, what you thought, if you had more about some of those particulars, but also I thought it was, you know, it was interesting, the relationship as well to the Native peoples, right, that are also represented in the pageantry. They're in some of the, like, in some of the photo sessions, right? You'll have the different historical people, and you'll see these costumed Native Americans. I'm wondering if you can talk some to some of that really messy history behind this, and why you chose to talk about what you talked about, and maybe if there was other parts that you chose not to, just for the sake of keeping focused on what you wanted to focus on.
Yeah, you know, so we were able to, well, so I went to Laredo to shoot one pageant a year before to understand how it worked. And I was really sad not to include the debutante I followed, because she was really amazing. But one of the things that I learned in following her is about the parallel celebration that's happening, where you have the Pocahontas celebration versus, you know, the George Washington, the Martha Washington celebration. And it was incredibly complicated, and I really think it would have been a completely different film to follow it. And unfortunately, it was a film that needed more resources, because it required a lot of more research to really tell that story well. But from what I can see from where I stood and from what my angle was, is that in order, and it's talked about a little in the film, is, you know, where you have these Anglos arriving into a place that you know, is being controlled by Mexican families, and obviously, like, there are all these more ancient lands here that are the borders have been redrawn and drawn so many times that we don't even, you know at this point, or they were so fluid that they changed so often, is what I meant. And so here you have these Anglo men coming to try to figure out how we can make a safe space to prosper and to grow and to assimilate. Here they are bringing this invention of the red men to a place that's already brown. So, so how do you deal with that? It's just, you know, there has to be a different way than this fraternity can't unfold in the same way as they can in other parts of the country. And so this is part of the context where the Society of Martha Washington started to have their presentations, and Pocahontas enters into the storyline because George Washington gives the key to the city to Pocahontas. And Pocahontas is an invention in the sense that, you know, she also never stepped foot in this area. These are other, you know, other kinds of indigenous people, like, you know, the Yaqui, the Apache, the Comanche. I mean, there's many other types of Native folks that are not being honored and instead being erased through this celebration. So anyway, it's incredibly complicated. And it was something that, you know, I tried to allude to just by talking about how identity is layered. And it's not as simple as, you know, you're Mexican or you're American or even Latinx today. You know, I mean, it's just like there's this history and layering of your identity in this region, and definitely Native identity as a part of that. But yeah, you're right that it wasn't in the film in a way where we could really unpack that. It would have been, you know, we would have had to embed ourselves in that society, and it would have taken longer, and we would have required more resources. So, you know, it's does it make the film less interesting? I don't know, but you know, this is what we were able to do with what we had. But it's worth talking about, definitely.
We actually shot a lot of footage of the Pocahontas Ball and participants, and we really couldn't use like 90% of what we shot, 95% of what we shot, just because, like Cristina said, it really was kind of its own thing, and it needed more resources, and it needed more research, and it needed more time spent on it. And honestly, I feel like it could have deserved its own film. It could have been like, you know, its own feature-length documentary. But yeah, there was just so much to unpack there. But it would have taken over Las Martas, I think, if we had included more footage of it.
I just want to say one thing, that you know, this is about the artistic approach towards the film. Like, I think an outsider filmmaker, meaning somebody not from the border, might have come in and done something like the film. There's a documentary called The Order of Myths, where they compare the Black pageant with the white pageant. You know, and it's not New Orleans, but it's in outside. You know, I'm not sure if you remember, Erin, but no, but
it was someplace in the South. Yeah,
it's in that area. And you know, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to compare the two and say, oh, you know, which one is wealthier, which one is, you know, I was not interested in that kind of storyline. I wanted to do a storyline that was a coming of age story, but I wanted to set it in a historical context so we could go back and see how Anglos and Mexicans made Texas. And obviously Native Americans are part of that, but it was something I couldn't fit into a narrative that was contained within this kind of coming of age idea without having to go to those lengths of like comparing them. You know.
And I think it would have been really easy.
It was great. And I agree, like you have that's why I was like, you have to keep it to the story that you can tell, right? So I appreciate you talking about some of those choices that you have to make, right? Like as you're putting together your Las Martas, what is that going to be, right? And it can't be everything, it needs to be the right thing. So Erin, I'm sorry I cut you off.
I was just going to say, I think it would have been really easy to make a kind of a sensationalized outsider perspective, you know, especially of the Pocahontas ball, which there's so much in there that would have been so easy for us to kind of, you know, pick apart and look at it from an outsider lens. And I know that was really important to Cristina to have it really feel like an insider perspective, or as close to insider as possible. And that's why the experts were all people who were from the area, and just have it be a thoughtful film and not one that mocked what was going on, or that, you know, kind of exploited the potentially sensationalistic aspects of it. But one that just really kind of took a really thoughtful approach about, like, what does it mean, you know, to be Latinx? What does it mean to be Texan? What does it mean to be, you know, from Laredo? You know.
For sure. So there's a couple questions over here, and I'm gonna kind of focus on the, you know, what challenges did you face while making the film? Have you faced challenges as Latina filmmakers? But I'm personally particularly interested in how hard was the cinematography on this film? And then broadly, did you face other challenges with this film, and have you faced challenges as Latinas? How'd you shoot this film? Let's start there. Especially the dresses, right? The pageant dresses.
So yeah, there were different shooting styles. So, you know, there was the more personal, where it's just me and the girls. Then there was the observational, where we had a cinematographer with us. It was a very small, intimate crew. And then the pageant was really fun to shoot. I mean, so visual. And we had 2 cinematographers with us, and we shot rehearsals. We shot dress rehearsals, and we shot the actual pageant. And what was great about the dress rehearsals is that it allowed us a chance to capture different angles at different times, without having to have more cameras to shoot at once, because we then had a second opportunity to move the cameras around to get a different angles. So in terms of cinematography, that's kind of pretty much the style.
So a lot of the intimate interview footage that you see was shot by Cristina. And then, yeah, a lot of the big pageant stuff was shot by the cinematographers that we brought to Laredo, Eddie and Craig. And yeah, they did an amazing job, all 3 of them. And then there's a little some pickups, I think, as well, right? Mm-hmm. Cristina? Yeah.
Yeah.
But those were the 3 main cinematographers. And then, do you want to talk
about that shooting a little bit earlier as well? So.
And Cristina, did you want to talk about specifically some of the things that were hard about making the film?
Yeah. So I remember the challenge really. The challenge was getting the society to allow us to shoot. You know, that was incredibly important, because without that we wouldn't have a film. So, you know, that was just. You know, I was sweating and presenting my vision to the board and to the whole society, and I talked about what my interest was and my mission rather as a filmmaker, which is to present an alternate narrative, so we don't have the same border narrative all the time. That it really was important to me, and it still is today, to present a different way of thinking about the border that's not about walls, that's not about separation, but rather it's a coming together. And I was also interested in the power here of women, that these women are professionals and are, you know, they care about legacy, and they care about how they look. They want to, you know, that's all. No, there's nothing wrong with that. So I think they really responded to the idea that I was not going to come in and be a parachute filmmaker who was going to come and say, "Oh, look, isn't this ironic?" Because that was what they're used to, you know. And so, but anyway, that was a huge challenge. And then after that, it was finding young women who would be willing to speak about their own challenges and trying to fit into the society, as well as like trying to be themselves, and how do you work that out. And the responsibility of that, the huge weight that's on their shoulders, like it's literally on their shoulders. It's an incredibly heavy dress. The weight of all that legacy is really, that's weighing them down just as much as the fabric, and so, I would say that was a challenge, and just the challenge of being there for extended periods of time, when, I was living in New York, but I had to live in Texas for a while, and that was fine. I'm Texan. I'm Tejana. It's like I'm comfortable, so I was home. I felt home. It's as different as it is from El Paso. God, Erin, help me out. What were some of the other challenges we had?
I mean, certainly the trust issue was an issue throughout it. Getting people to sign releases was something we worked on throughout the entire thing. But I imagine it must have helped, the fact that you are Latina, the fact that you are from Texas, in terms of like approaching the society and gaining their trust. And a woman, I think all those things helped it on some level. I think they connected with you, and I imagine, trusted you maybe a little more than they might have, somebody who's just completely outside of Texas, and,
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I always question that, to be honest, because I wonder if there was suspicion, just because I'm, it's such a close-knit society that, it was really about who kind of. And I guess being from the border helped, and being a woman potentially. But I always felt like there was also the suspicion that, I was always battling as an outsider, even though I tried to express the ways that I was similar, because I would never have been a debutante, even if I was in Laredo. So, I had to overcome that hurdle of expressing the beauty I saw, in what I was seeing, and it's a really true rare thing right now these days to have some kind of event that's trying to bring people together across the border, as opposed to separate. And to be able to continue working on this initiative to keep families united is quite beautiful.
And that's a sincere passion of yours, and I'm sure that came through. You genuinely care about the border, you love the border, and you want to see it represented fairly. And I think that resonated with them on some level. Mm-hmm. And it's something I care about a lot too. I mean, of course, my experience was very different. I'm not from Texas. I was born in Canada. I was raised all over North America. I lived in Miami for many years with Cuban Cuban step relatives. I lived in California, Oregon, all over the place. But having that, multicultural upbringing and living in multiple countries, and, a lot of these issues kind of resonated with me, identity, what it means to be American, what it means to belong. Those are absolutely issues that resonated with me.
Mm-hmm. One other challenge that's really more like practical, I guess, in some ways, is that we needed to make sure we had the story in 1 year, because then a new group of debutantes would be presenting. If we didn't get that story with these young women, we could get the backstory, but with the story of the present tense timeline, we were going to have to start all over again, and we couldn't. We just didn't have the resources to start over. So that was a challenge.
That was stressful. Yeah, we had to get it. We had to get that specific parade, those girls on those floats. I remember racing around trying to get the right angles to film those girls, our girls on their floats. And, in the ball, of course, and all of the behind the scenes footage with them. It was really important to capture all of it, because that was it. There was one opportunity, and then the next year would be a brand new crop of girls.
That's something I had in mind too. I was watching, is like, this is all on a clock, right? Like, it happens, and you have to get it, which is part of why I was also interested in how you shot it. Like, but I am curious, what was the reaction to this film by the participants and the community when they saw it? It's now been a decade. Are you in touch with any of them still? Do you know how the border has changed, especially in this, I don't want to talk about walls, but in this, right? Like we've just been through a pretty tough presidency for the border. So, how did they react? What's going on there now? Do you know?
So, I presented the film in its before I locked picture to the board president and a couple of the people on the board to make sure that I was factually accurate. And so when they saw it, I showed it to them before I showed it to the young women and to Linda, the dressmaker of the film. So they were of two minds. They thought it was really beautiful and poetic. They were nervous as well. They were nervous because of the class issues that were being addressed. And ultimately, they had to go back and get another vote from the full society to see if they would endorse the film. They were supposed to present the film publicly in Laredo. And in the meantime, I went and I showed it to the young girls and I showed it to the dressmaker. But the dressmaker, must have heard something because she immediately said, I don't like this film. And I thought, what? How you already saw it? How did you get access? I mean, you must be really powerful if you already saw the film. And she's like, no, I just, I already know what it's like. And she literally said, I've seen it in my mind, meaning like, she's heard about it. And so, I mean, it was really intense. It was really tense. It was really tense. And so she sat down to watch it and she didn't want to like it, but I saw her, I saw her slowly embracing it, meaning like she wasn't talking back to the screen like she was at first. And then at the end, I was really nervous because I thought, oh, she's gonna not, so there's some conflict here that she's gonna talk to me about. And I was quite nervous, but I was really happy because she appreciated the art and she was saying, that's me, that's how I am, So I thought, okay, great, and then I showed it to the young girls, and each one also responded to the visuals, and in terms of the story, it was just like, oh yeah, it was really sweet because it was a year later, or a year and a half later or so, and one of them said, oh yeah, that's how I was back then. So, which was really great to hear. She was much more grown up now.
Well, it was really a snapshot in time, right? Because they're teenagers, and so of course, after we made the film, they went on to college, and so yeah, we got to touch base with Laura and Rosario when they were already in college, and they were like, I'm sure it felt like eons ago to them,
yeah.
Because you grow so fast at that age, and. But I think, in some level, they appreciated having this snapshot, having this archive of this really momentous event in their lives, and it was filmed so beautifully. And I think and Linda, I think, appreciated that her artistry, her dresses, are now preserved on, for posterity in this really special way. And so even though I think on some level she was worried and the rest of society were worried about the representation of class and all these other complicated issues, they also recognize like, oh, it is this poetic representation of this thing that we pour our heart and souls into.
So ultimately, the society did not present the film publicly in Texas, which was too bad. But we've kept in touch with some of the folks through Facebook. It's not very personal, but I know that I saw when Laurita got engaged, and just Rosario's graduated. Anyway, Linda's still working strong, and my cousin is still there. So I'm keeping in touch as they continue the tradition, and nothing's going to stop them. So even today.
Well, I think that's a great place to wrap. We've been talking for a bit, and I've really enjoyed it. Again, I want to thank you so much, Cristina, and so much, Erin, for taking time this evening to join us for this Q&A. I want to thank everyone in the audience who who has seen the film and who joined us for this conversation. If you missed Las Martas, or if you want to see it again, or if you want to tell your friends about it, it will still be available, and you can check the La Mujer, atx.net, or La Mujer 2021, the event on Facebook, for the information to see that, let people know about it. And also a couple of highlights for La Mujer coming up. This Thursday at 7 o'clock, so tomorrow at 7 o'clock, there's a special presentation of Juana, First Dream, presented by Alante Flamenco. And there's also a live Q&A following that. On Friday at 7 o'clock, there's a virtual premiere of Yanawana Legend of the Blue Bonnet, presented by the Indigenous Cultures Institute and Teatro Vivo, again with live Q&A following the performance. And I'm sorry, it's Yanawana's Legend of the Blue Bonnet. And Saturday, there's musical performances, 4 o'clock to 9 o'clock, or musical performances at 7, platicas throughout the day. So check out the events, join us for more, and have a lovely rest of your week and weekend. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Sounds like a great lineup.